The first step on the doors is adding all of the reinforcement panels. Both doors that are on the inside get these big pocket reinforcements so that the handle of your trekking pole doesn't wear through. So what I did with these, I just hemmed the bottom edge and then basted it on with a really narrow seam allowance and a long stitch length so that it will stay in place. Then there is the corner reinforcers. I just eyeballed that, cut it, and then placed them in from the seam allowance so that the raw edges will be encased in the seam allowance in the hem, but I don't have fabric in the seam allowance, making it bulky and hard to sew and just awkward later. On to sewing. To finish off this stage of the doors, all that needs to be done is I need to hem the door edge. In order to keep the hem just a little bit less bulky, I'm gonna cut down the patch just so then it's encased inside the seam, just like the patches on the door corners were, without all this fabric being inside that hem, that seam allowance. Now with the reinforcement patches in place and the door edges hemmed, I'm just gonna get them aligned, both door panels aligned at the top, and get them basted in place. The basting makes it a lot easier to attach them to the roof panels so they aren't just sliding around. Now with the doors basted together, they're almost ready to attach to the roof assembly. But I'm just gonna do one more thing before I do that. The pattern has you adding the peak guy out later and just sewing it straight on to here. I wanna add a little bit more robustness to that system, so I'm gonna incorporate it into the seam as well as stitching it down. So I'm just gonna baste it right now, then it will be much, much easier to handle when sewing this unit all together, because that's a little tricky as it is. No need to make it even more difficult. So once I get my webbing measured out, I want it 1 inch down from the peak, maybe 1.5 inches. Let's split the difference between 1 and 2 and make it 1.5 inches. And then there's also going to be 1 inch hidden in the seam allowance because there's a 1 inch seam allowance in here, which means my total length of webbing is going to have to be 2.5 inches. That's even easy math, even I can do that. But then also just a little bit stuck out of the seam just for ease of sewing. So I'm gonna make it 3 inches. One trick for making these edges stay together so that they're easier to sew is when you melt the ends so that they don't fray out, you just kind of squish them together with your fingers and then they're temporarily attached. This is certainly easy to like if you want to rip it, it's easy to do, but it certainly is enough of like a basting stitch, as it were, to keep it where you want it to be. So I'll just add a mark for where I want this to be on my seam allowance. And then I'll get it basted on there. Another thing this will help avoid is the mistake I made earlier where I installed my line lock upside down. Because of how I put it into the seam, it looked right to me at the time without thinking about it very hard. But by doing it this way, the door's in the use orientation and I'm not trying to stick it into a seam that's in a different orientation and confusing myself. This way will make sure I'm not ripping out layers and layers and layers of stitching through my waterproof fabric. This tie-out is going to get a lot of reinforcement stitching, given that this is one of the high stress points in the tent. So, one thing I forgot. Before I move on to adding the doors to the roof panel, I just added my door tie-ups and basted them on to the door panel like I did with the top guy out points. There they are, 2 door units ready to be sewn onto the roof unit.